For some lawyers, it might come as a surprise that people in deportation proceedings don't necessarily get a lawyer.
For the people who are locked up, only 10% of them have lawyers. In Franco Gonzalez, our lead named plaintiff, Mr. Franco, had severe mental developmental disabilities. The immigration judge realized that he could not even respond to the questions, and he didn't have an attorney, so the immigration judge closed the case. And yet he remained in immigration custody for 5 years until another detainee said, "What's happening to this guy who's just been here forever and no one's helping him?" and brought it to the attention of local legal aid. So we filed an amended complaint to what was happening with Mr. Franco. We brought in other named plaintiffs. One was Mr. Kukriensky, who was a refugee from the Ukraine, later diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. And Mr. Kukriensky, when he showed up to court, the day after trying to kill himself in his own cell, they proceeded forward with the immigration proceedings, and he was ordered removed. There's hundreds of other individuals who are like them. One of the travesties was that the immigration court never even did a screening for competency prior to our lawsuit, and it was certified as a class that covered all the detention centers in the West, in Arizona, California, and Washington State. Thankfully, we now have a system where the government's required to do a screening to determine if individuals have the capacity to represent themselves. And for those who suffer from a severe mental disorder and don't have the capacity, they are now required to appoint counsel. The government has now recognized that, yes, we're going to implement that nationwide.
Franco Gonzalez versus Holder has had a huge impact on the practice of immigration law. And so we've seen people who would almost certainly have been deported who end up being able to stay here.
This was litigation that lasted 5 years. The government fought us tooth and nail the whole way. Northwest Immigrant Rights Project teamed together with the ACLU of Southern California and the Public Council, another nonprofit organization, as well as the law firm of Sullivan and Cromwell. Without every one of these team members, we wouldn't have had a chance. I represent Northwest Immigrant Rights Project here. It's because of our lawyers who are down there in the detention center every day, who are running into these individuals, that we had the facts, the information that we needed to marshal to present as evidence to ultimately prevail in this case.
This sort of litigation is something that he regularly involves himself in and is successful in. The number of impact cases that he's had has been sort of almost too many to count.
I can't live without my family. They're the backbone of all that I am. My wife and 2 daughters are amazing individuals. No one would ever suspect that I'm an accomplished tuba player.
I don't think there's any question that he's the premier immigration litigator here in the Pacific Northwest and probably throughout the United States.
Right now, we're representing children who are in deportation proceedings. You have kids who fled trafficking, sexual abuse, kids who are being threatened with their lives for failure to join a gang. There's so many horrific events that are forcing the kids to flee to the United States, and yet many of them end up without attorneys. That's just a mockery of justice. And so, following up on our success in the Franco case, just as it's unfair for a person with mental disorders to represent themselves, it's equally unjust to force children to go through this process without legal representation.
He doesn't just do this impact litigation. He goes to immigration court and represents individual people. He goes to the immigration office to sit down with people who are applying for their green cards or citizenship. And he really cares about every single one of those clients. And that, I think, is what motivates him to be the lawyer he is.
It's very satisfying to receive the bar's highest honor, but I think what's most important about it is the attention it brings to the work that's being done at Northwest Immigrant Rights Project and to the need that our clients have. Every day of the week, families are being permanently separated. We've had clients who have been murdered after being deported from the United States. And so that's the motivation, is to help alleviate some of the suffering.